We begin today the Gemara on Daf Kuf and Gimel Amud Aleph, right at the beginning. It says Ve'ela ha detanya. So this is actually in continuation to what it said in the Mishnah on Kuf and Beis Amud Aleph. There it says if you have two people with the same name in one city, Yosef ben Shimon is the example of the Mishnah. So in such a case, the Mishnah says these two individuals cannot ever take out a document of a loan against each other. But the Mishnah says, and also the Mishnah says that nobody could ever come and collect money from them, because they could always claim that it's someone else that owes you the money. But from the Mishnah you understand that if they want to be Meitzi Shtar Chayv to collect money from someone else, they can. And the Gemara here explains that we're not Chayshish that a star fell and someone else picked it up. So in our case, if there's two people by the name of Yosef ben Shimon, and one of them is taking out a loan, trying to collect money, we're not going to say, oh, maybe the lender is not you, maybe the lender is the other Yosef ben Shimon, and it fell from him and you picked it up. We're not chayshish for nefila. That's the point the Gemara concluded in Daf Kufa and Beis Amud Beis. There is another concept of nefila when we're chayshish that it may have fallen from anybody in the world, when a star doesn't have a proper name on it. That yet, but not in such a case when you're chayshish that it fell from one person and you found it, we're not chayshish. Okay, but now here, the Gemara is going to bring up Brasa, where it says different than what it says in our Mishnah. This that it says in our Brasa, just like these two individuals by the name Yosef ben Shimon can't ever take out a document of a loan, one against another, so too they can't ever take out a document to collect a loan from anybody else. So what's the pshat in the Mishnah? What is the argument here between what it says in the Brisa and then what it says in the Mishnah? So now we can't say that the argument here is about nefila. The argument here is about that maybe we're chayshish that it fell, because that we concluded in our Mishnah that based on our Mishnah that we're not chayshish for that. So would we say that the Tana of this Brisa disagrees with that? So the Gemara is going to come up with other explanations for what it says here in the Brisa and what it argues with and what it says in the Mishnah. So one pshat the Gemara says, "Ba'oisius niknois b'mesira kamiflagi." What they're arguing over here about is not everybody agrees. We're not chayshish that it fell out of anybody's hands. But the argument is, can you acquire letters, which really means any document, or in this case, the document of a loan? Could you just acquire it by the fact that someone gives it to you? Someone has a document of a loan, and that someone owes him money. He's a lender. Now he wants to give it to someone else that he should be able to collect that loan instead of you. So could you just give him over that very document itself? And just by giving him over the document, he acquires it and now gets the rights to collect it? Or do I say that's not enough? If you want to give him that document and he should acquire it, you have to make another kinyan on that document. You're going to have to write up an additional shtar mechire that you're selling him this document. So that's the argument here. Tani didan savar, the Tana of our Mishnah holds, oisius niknes b'mesira, that letters, meaning a shtar, in this case, the shtar of a loan, you can just sell it by giving it to someone else. So therefore, if there are these two people with the name Yosef ben Shimon, and one of them has it in his hands, so even if it wasn't his originally, if he now has it in his hands, what does that mean? That it was sold to him, it was given to him. We're not chayshish that it fell out of anybody's hands. It was given to him, and so therefore he acquires it, so he can collect with it the loan. But the Tana Berasavar, the Tana of the Brisa holds, Ein oisius niknes b'mesira. You can't acquire a document of a loan just by the fact that it was given into your hands. Just because you're holding it in your hands, even if he gave it to you, you will not acquire it. You have to have an additional shtar mechira to say that it's yours to collect with it. So therefore, in this case, the fact that you're holding it in your hands will say that could be the other person gave it to you. He gave it to you to keep for him, to hold for him, or even if he wanted you to be kainit, but you're not going to be kainit without having an additional document that says that you acquired it. So therefore, in this case, there are two people with the same name, Yosef ben Shimon, so we don't know who it belongs to. So even when you're holding it in your hands, it's not going to be any proof that it's yours. Or the Gemara says, the Kula Alma, everybody agrees that oisius niknes b'mesira. In a regular case, when you're selling a document to someone else, you don't have to write up a new document to create the sale. Just by giving it over, the sale takes effect. And according to the Rashbam, the reason the Gemara is saying this is because this is the halacha. Most Rishonim disagree with the Rashbam. The Rashbam holds the halacha is you want to sell someone a document of a loan or of a property, and it's really the property that you're selling. You're giving him over the deed or the loan that now it's his, then you could just give over the document. So now, what's the argument over here? B'tzarech lahavi raya kamiflagi. Do you have to bring proof for the fact that this document is yours, that it was given over to you? And it's not something that person gave you to hold for him. Do you have to prove the fact that he actually gave you this document? That's the argument there. Tana Didan Sova, the Tana of Mishnah holds, Ein Sarach Lahavi Raya. If you're holding a document in your hands and it doesn't have your name on it, it has someone else's name on it, what's it doing in your hands?
That's the right.
The fact that it's in your hands, that itself is the raya, that it's yours. You don't have to have any additional raya. So therefore, in our case as well, when you have two people with the same name of Yosef ben Shimon, even if it wasn't yours originally and the other person gave it to you, but now that you have it in your hands, that itself is the raya, that it's yours. The Tana Berasavar, but the Tana of the Brasa holds, Sarich Lahavi Raya, that you're going to have to bring proof that it was given to you. In such a case, when you're holding this kind of star in your hands, it could be that it belonged to someone else and he just gave it to you as a pekadin. You're going to have to bring a raya that he actually gave it to you and he sold it to you. So that's by every case. When I say that a star is nikne b'mesire, but if it doesn't have your name on it, just the fact that you're holding it in your hands is not proof that it was sold to you. So you have to bring an additional raya. So over here, by two Yosef and Shimon's, you're going to have to bring an additional raya that this was sold to you, and therefore, otherwise, the Tana de Brisa says you can't collect along with it. Now, the Rishayim here explain this. This is actually, according to this opinion, comes out that this is an exception to the rule. Usually we have a klal in Gemara which is called a chazakah. The very fact that something is in your possession is the biggest proof that it's yours. And the Gemara bases that on the concept of chazakah, kol ma shetachas yad adam shaloyu. There's a chazakah, whatever you have in your possession is yours, because we don't assume a person is a gazlan. In this case, what would I assume otherwise? We're not choishish for nefila. We're not choishish that it fell. So what am I choishish? I should be choishish that he's a gazlan? We're not choishish that he's a gazlan. So over here, why would there be any need for an additional proof? He just has it in his hands. That should be the best proof, like any other movable item that you have in your possession. But the Rishayim say that according to this opinion, the reason this is an exception is because by every case, when you have an item in your hands, that itself is the valuable thing that you're holding. So that itself is proof. Here, really the piece of paper itself is not worth the money here. It's the paper that says in it that there's a loan you can collect, or a property that belongs to yours because of what it says in this paper. So here you don't really have what's of value in your hands. You just have the paper. So in such a case, this opinion holds, you're still going to have to prove that what you're holding in your hands is yours.
You can't hold the field in your hand.
Yeah, and a chanami. So that's part of the point, that since you can't make you don't have the chazaka and the object itself, you only have the piece of paper in your hands. So therefore for that, you have to have another proof for this. So the Gemara, now Gemara brings the source of this machlokes, the itmer. So we learned oisius niknes b'mesira, that letters, meaning a document of a loan or of any kind of document, you can acquire it just by giving it over to this person that has it now. Now Abaya tzarech lahavi raya. So Abaya says that you have to bring a raya that you acquired it. It's different than any other case where you have something in your hands that itself is proof. Rabba says no, it's not an exception. It's no different. Ein et tzarech lahavi raya. The fact that you have it in your hands, that itself is the raya that it's yours. Amar Abaye says minon minullah. What's my source to say that this case is an exception, that you're going to have to prove that it's yours? Because the Tanya and Abraisa we learned echad mina achin, that one of brothers that he has a document of a loan that he's possessing. Now we're talking about a brothers that they are inheriting their father, and they didn't split the inheritance yet. And this one of the brothers has a star in his hands, which was from a chayiv that was owed to the father. And he's holding it, he's possessing it and saying that my brothers gave it to me. It's mine. So now we say, Olav lahavi raya. He has to prove that the brothers actually gave it to him. If the brothers claim, we never gave it to you, it's part of the inheritance, so he's going to have to prove that the brothers gave it to him. So now what do we see here? Even though he has it in his possession, it's a document, and he has it in his possession, he still has to prove that it was given to him, and he didn't steal it. So my love, don't you think I can learn from here that huadin lachrini, the same as in any other case. By a document, it's different than possessing any metaltal in your hands. When you hold a document, that's something that you have to prove that it's yours, and you didn't steal it. So this is the source for Abaye's opinion. But Rava says you can't learn from there. Because Shani Achin, case this Bryce is speaking about his brothers, and by brothers with an inheritance which wasn't split yet, it's different. The Shamtum Adadi, because they feel more casual in going and grabbing and taking something. And when one says that he got it from his brothers, it's very possible that he actually took it because he feels he's makel to go and take it. It's not like a regular kind of gzela. So in this case, he's going to have to prove it. But by a regular person, you have a document in your hands. We're not chayshish that he stole it, and we say that it's his. He doesn't have to prove it. Now, others say that the proof of this brisa was brought in the opposite. That Omar Rava said, Mina Minala. What's my source to say? That you don't have to prove that it's yours, because it says in this brisa that in a case when it's one of the brothers that has a document of a loan in his hands, then I say, he has to bring a raya that he actually got it from his brothers and he didn't just steal it. So Rava said, why does a brisa say specifically the case of brothers? It's because only by brothers do I say that a brother feels casual to go and grab and take something, so he has to prove that it didn't happen. But if it would be any other person, Stam, that has a document in his hands, he doesn't have to prove it. The fact that it's in his hands is a proof that it's his. That was Rava's raya. But Abaye can answer this and say, no, achin itzrechale. Really, the halacha of the brisa applies to any person. Whenever you have a document in your hands, you have to prove that what you have is yours. But over here, why does it mention dafka brothers? Because there's a chiddush, as we explained before. I would think to say, kivin the shamtum adadi, that in this case, because they go and take from one another, Eime, Mizdari, Zihiri, that maybe I would say that Adarabah, they'll be careful to make sure that another brother doesn't go and grab anything. So therefore, Adarabah, there would be a svara to say over here that you don't have to prove that it was given to you, because brothers are aware that they're living in the same house and they're still sharing everything together. So they're very careful that no one should take. So if you have it in your hands, it's proof that they gave it to you. Kamash Malan, therefore the Brisa is saying over here in this case that he's still going to have to bring a raya that it's his. Now the Gemara goes back again to what it said in the Mishnah. So now in the Mishnah it said, going back to the case of two people that have the same name, Yosef ben Shimon. So as we saw before in the Mishnah, it says that they cannot collect from one another with a loan with this name of Yosef ben Shimon, because you don't know who's the borrower and who's the lender. So in the Brisa, though, it says different. In the Brisa, it says, just like any of these two individuals with the same name of Yosef ben Shimon, they can go and collect a loan from someone else, as we concluded before. We're not chayshish that the star fell out of someone else's hands, or the other person by the name of Yosef ben Shimon's hands. But now the Brisa says, Kach moitziin zeh al zeh. For the same reason, they can come and collect from one another. And whenever chayshish that you're saying that you're the lender and I'm the borrower, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the shtar fell out of your hands and I'm really the lender and you're the borrower. So here we see that the Brisa says, since we're not chayshish from the fila, they could actually collect even from each other. So that argues on what it said in our Mishnah, that they can't collect from each other. Says the Gemara, what's the basis of their argument? And again, the argument is not about whether it fell out of anyone's hands. That we're not chayshish for. So the Gemara says, there's another machlekes here. What they're arguing is whether we say that we can write a document for the borrower even if the lender is not present. That's usually what the Gemara says. You can't write a document for a lender that somebody owes you this and this amount of money if the borrower is not there. You're going to go and use it even if you didn't borrow the money. But if a person is ready that you should write a shtar that he borrowed money, even if the lender is not there, then you could write it. But the Gemara says, no, that's actually the argument here between the Tana of the Mishnah and the Tana of the Brisa. Tana Didon Savar, the Tana of our Mishnah holds, you can write a document for a borrower that he owes money, even if the malva is not there. And if that's the case, over here, when you have two people by the same name of Yosef ben Shimon, it could end up being a problem. Because now, Zimnin, the also legabi safra, so it could happen one time that this person with the name of Yosef ben Shimon goes to the scribe and Vesadi and witnesses. And he tells them, Kisvuli shtara, write me a shtar de be'inon lemezav mi Yosef ben Shimon chavri. I want to borrow money from my friend Yosef ben Shimon that has the same name like me. And they write him the shtar. And then after they write and they sign the document for him, what does he do? Nikitale, He takes the star, and then he goes into this Yosef ben Shimon and says, Havli mei Zuzi the Yafsis Minoi. Give me $100 that you borrowed from me. Because it says in the star that Yosef ben Shimon borrowed money from me, not that I'm borrowing money from you. So that's why there's a problem in this case when they have the same name. So this is even without being chayshish, that the star would have fallen and the other would pick it up. But since you write a star for the loiva without the malva, you can go ahead and do this. However, Tana Berasavar, the Tana of the Brasa that says that they could collect from each other, so he holds, you don't write a star for a borrower unless the lender is there. So such a scenario could never happen because they must have both been there together, both Yosef and Shimon's. Therefore, you can't turn it around against them. Okay, going back to the Mishnah, it said another case in the Mishnah that Nimtza le'echad bein shtoreisav. So if you find amongst this person's documents, now the way the Gemara understands what we're talking about now is that amongst the shtaris of a lender, this lender has documents, and amongst his documents you find a shtar that says, basically a receipt that says that shtaris shel Yosef ben Shimon parua, that the money, the loan that Yosef ben Shimon owes me was paid up already. So we don't know which Yosef ben Shimon that's referring to, that owed him money. It could be one or the other. So we say, because of this, he can't collect from either one of them. Shtara is shneim peruin. So the shtar of both of them is considered to be paid up. We don't know who it is. Okay, so now, based on this, the Gemara asks, Taime de nimtza. The only reason I say that you can't collect money from any of these two Yosef ben Shimons is because the lender found amongst his documents a receipt that says that one of the that a Yosef ben Shimon was paid up at loan from Yosef ben Shimon, so we don't know who it is. But if he did not find this receipt, Matzi Mapek, he's able to collect from Yosef ben Shimon. But how? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah right before that? The Mishnah said, "V'loy acher yachal lohetzi alei shtar chayv." That in a case where there's two people with the name of Yosef ben Shimon, you can't collect from either one of them because you don't know who the borrower is. Over here we're saying that the only reason you can't collect from them is because you have a receipt that says that the loan of Yosef ben Shimon was paid up. So the Gemara says, second where am I over here? That goes together. Yeah. So we learned in the Mishnah that says that you can't collect from either one of them without having that receipt that says that Yosef ben Shimon pays up. Okay, so the Gemara gives two pshat. One pshat the Gemara says, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, B'mishuloshin. That over here, it's talking about a case, even though there's two Yosef ben Shimons, but it's not an issue, because they wrote also the grandfather's name, Yosef ben Shimon ben Yaakov. So you know exactly who he is. The other person is Yosef ben Shimon ben Yitzchak. So it's not a problem. So if that's the case, so then probably in the receipt that you have, it also says who the receipt is for. So v'nechsi tavra, b'shma the man, the chsiv. Let's see the receipt, whose name does it have in it. So why are you saying that if you have one receipt, and you don't know if it's a receipt for this Yosef ben Shimon or for the other, you can't collect from either one of them. Look who's the grandfather. Rav Aishia says the case in the Mishnah is b'mishuloshin b'shtar, that in the document of the loan over here it says who the grandfather is, so you know exactly whose document it is that owes you money. But in the receipt though, it says that Yosef ben Shimon paid you, and in the receipt it doesn't say who the grandfather is, and now you don't know who it is that paid you. That's why in this case we say only with the receipt that says that one of them paid you, you can't collect. But in the other case in the Mishnah, where it didn't say the name of the grandfather, so then l'chatchila you can't collect the loan, because you don't know who's the one that borrowed the money from you. That's one pshat of the Mishnah. Okay, so this is all again based on the fact that we're saying that the pshat in our Mishnah is that we're speaking about a case where the lender finds a receipt amongst his documents saying that a Yosef ben Shimon paid him up. So we don't know who that Yosef ben Shimon is. Okay, now, according to this pshat in the Gemara, the Rashbam points out that this is unusual, because b'derech klal, when we speak about a receipt, who's the one that has the receipt? Not the lender. The borrower is usually that holds on to the receipt. Here the Gemara is understanding that our Mishnah is talking about a case where the lender finds this receipt amongst his documents. And usually the Gemara actually says in Bava Brasa, or not in Bava Brasa, sorry. The Gemara says this, Rashbam quotes from another place where the Gemara says that in such a case, it's in Bava Metzia, then in such a case, the fact that a lender has that receipt in his hands is worthless. Because maybe he prepared the receipt, but he never gave it to the borrower because he actually never paid it up. So what good is the receipt in the possession of the lender? So Rashbam says, the Gemara there asks us, and the Gemara there explains that this receipt was found amongst torn documents that the lender had, documents that were paid up. So because it was already amongst those torn documents, it looks like that this receipt was also a receipt of a loan that was actually paid up, even though it wasn't given yet to the borrower. Okay, but now the Gemara says another pshat. It wasn't found by the lender b'chlal. Abaya Omar, Abaya says, what the Mishnah is talking about over here is, Hachika Omar. The Mishnah is saying as follows, Nimtze l'loive ben shtareisav. If the loive, the borrower, finds amongst of his documents that says, Shtarei shel Yosef ben Shimon alai parua, that the Yosef ben Shimon that I owe money to is already paid up, so then I say, Shtarei shneim paruim. So then in such a case I say that the shtar of both of them is paid up. No, none of them can come and collect money from him if he has a receipt that says that Yosef ben Shimon paid me, so then he could always take out that receipt to any one of them that are going to want to come and collect money from him. He's going to say, here, I have a receipt that Yosef ben Shimon paid me. But the Rashbam does point out though, but if these two Yosef and Shimons come together and they write a harsha to one another, meaning that they each one say that you can collect my loan, I can collect your loan, so then in such a case, if he takes out that receipt, he won't be able to push them both off and say, you paid me, or maybe you paid me, because they're both here together, and then he's going to have to pay. Going back to the Mishnah, it said, case of Yasu, what do you do in a case where you have two Yosef and Shimons in the same city? Yishaleshu, so you write the grandfather's name. Then the Mishnah said, or you write, if they both have the same grandfather's name, so you write, he's tall, he's short, and so on. And then you can write, he's a Kohen. But Tana, the Braisa goes a step further. Im hayushneim Kohenim, the Mishnah says you can write as a Kohen. What's if they're both Kohenim? Then Yichtavu Dairis, you write generations further. You write the great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, as far as you have to go in order to identify who's who. A person says to his son before he's passing away, that there is a document amongst all the documents that I have. He's a lender and people owe him money. But before he passes away, he says, amongst my document, there's a document that was paid up already. I don't know which one it is. Whether the person himself said this before he passed away, I don't know which one it is, or now, after he passes away, we now don't know which document he was referring to. So then, shtar is kulim perun. So we have to be chayshish regarding each one of the documents of a loan that he has in his possession that they're paid up because he didn't identify which one it is. Now, nimtza le'echad sham shnayim. If there's one borrower that borrowed money from this person twice, so now in such a case, he said that only one document was paid up, and this person owes him money twice. There are two documents that the same person owes him. So in such a case, we say hagadol perua. We say that the larger amount of a loan that we are concerned, maybe this is the one that was paid up. But the one that has a smaller amount, that we say is not paid up, because if it's the same person that owes money in two documents, and we know that he said only one document is paid up, so amongst the two of them, one of them is not paid up yet. So we're going to make this the children pay up the smaller amount, not the larger amount. Omar Rave, so Rave said, Shtar l'cho b'yodi perua. If a person made a statement and said that your shtar, that for a loan that I have is that you owe me money, is paid up. So what do we say now? He didn't identify which one this is. If let's say if someone borrowed money from him more than once, and he says that your loan is paid up, and that's it. He didn't identify more. So like we said in the Mishnah, we say hagadol perua. We say that the larger amount, the bigger loan, is paid up. But the smaller amount we'll say is not yet paid up, and that smaller amount you'll have to pay. However, if a person made a statement and said the obligations of loans that is in your you owe me, that is in my hands, is paid up, then I say shtares kulam peruan. The term chayv, even though it's a singular term, but chayv means whatever you owe me. That means that all loans that you owe me is all paid up. That's how we understand what he said, and therefore the borrower doesn't have to pay anything. So based on this, Ravin asks Rave, if that's the case, what's if a seller comes and says, my field is sold to you, and he didn't identify which one. So should I say, should I say that means that a large field is sold? I mean, he didn't identify which field it is, so we'll say that it refers to one field, and he refers to a large field. That's what he sold him. Now if he says, a field that I have is sold to you, so the term sadeh itself, would I now say that means kol sadais of mechuralai? Does that mean that all of his fields, all of his properties are sold to this person? And the reason why I would assume this is because the term sada, even though it's a singular term, but it could be used as a term that includes all the properties of the person. The Rashbam brings actually that this is the pasuk, the first pasuk in Parshas Vayishlach. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. How does the pasuk conclude? Stay Yadayim. Right. So what does stay Yadayim mean? Stay Yadayim means the area, all the fields by Yadayim. It's not referring just to one field. Right. So maybe over here, just like you're saying that if you use the term chayv, chayv means all loans. Maybe sadeh also means that the seller is saying sadeh. That means that you sold me all your properties. So the Gemara says, no, you can't compare. Hasam yad balashtar ala tachtaina. If it's a case of a seller that's saying something that's not clear, he's saying sadi or he's saying sada, and he's not saying clearly exactly what it is that he sold. So we say that the buyer has the lower hand, that the buyer is not going to be able to collect every property or collect a large property. He has the lower hand. The same thing, similar by a loan. Similar, I say by a loan, that was the whole point that Rava was saying before. That if you said shtar parua and you didn't identify which one, we'll assume that the larger shtar now is paid up. Or if you use the term chayv, we're going to assume that might mean that everything is paid up because the same thing. Yadi ala tachtaina, that the one that has a document in his hands, yadi ala tachtaina, and he can't come and collect because there's a svara to say that it's already paid up. A person lends money through a guarantor, meaning that he's lending someone money, and there's a person there that says that I guarantee that if this borrower doesn't pay up, I'll pay up instead. What happens in such a case? You can't get your payment from this guarantor. Now the Gemara will explain what that means is you don't get your payment from the guarantor first. First you have to go to the borrower. If the borrower doesn't pay you, so then you go to the guarantor. Now, if when you borrow the money, the lender says that I'm lending the money on condition that I should get paid from whomever I wish to get paid from, whether the borrower, whether the guarantor, then Yifram and Arif. Then he can go first and get paid from the guarantor. He doesn't have to go to the borrower first. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, even in such a case, where you clearly made that condition that I take from wherever I want first, if the borrower has properties to pay up with, so either way, you don't pay up from the arif, from the guarantor. You have to get paid up from the borrower. A similar thing, Rav Shimon Gamliel said as follows. If you have a situation where a person became a guarantor for the payment of a ksubah, this person said, if your husband doesn't pay you a ksubah, if he divorces you, I'll pay the ksubah. And now the husband is divorcing his wife. So here, in such a case, we're afraid that the husband and wife could make a knunya. They could conspire together and do the following. I'm going to divorce you. You're going to collect the ksubah from the guarantor. And now once you have the money, then I'll remarry you. So therefore, what we do is, in order to prevent this, yadireno hano, the husband is going to have to make a neder that she's not allowed to have any hano from him, so that he can't ever remarry her. Because, as I said, Shema Yasu Knunya al Nachasim Shalzev Yachzer. The wife will come and say that she's getting divorced, and she'll get divorced, and she'll collect the money from this guarantor, and then they'll get remarried. So if they make that neder, so Chamo Masakin, in such a case, you must make that neder. So like this, they can't play this Knunya. Talk to Gemara, my time. What's the reason for what it said in the Mishnah?
Even later, the husband doesn't have the money when he's going to make a
The husband's going to say, I don't have any money. Then he's
still going to go to the borrower?
He's going to be able to go to the Arif, but they must make this neder so that the husband can't get remarried to her again, because we're concerned about a knunya here. Talk to Gemara, my time. What is the reason for what it says in the Mishnah? That it's at this point, the Gemara understood that what it says in the Mishnah, that even when you have a guarantor, you can't collect from that guarantor. You have to go to the borrower. So you can't collect at all from the guarantor. So the Gemara wants to know, why not? He's a guarantor. So Rabbi Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu, Rabbi and Rav Yosef both said, Gavre Ashlemisli, that the guarantor says that you gave me a person, you gave me the loive, that I should make sure that borrower should be available for you to collect from him. That's what I guaranteed. I just guaranteed that you should have this person. that the borrower should be available to pay. And Gavra Shlem Islach, I'm making available for you the borrower. Go collect from him. Which means that the only thing I guaranteed is that the loiva will be in town. He'll be here available that you can go collect from him. Whether he has money to pay you or not, that's already not my business. If he doesn't have money, too bad. So you're going to have to wait until he has money. But I never guaranteed to pay if he doesn't have money. Again, I just guaranteed that the person, the loiva himself, he should be here available for you. That's all. That's why you can't collect from a guarantor. Mask of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman asks on this part of the Mishnah, Hi Dine de Parsoi. This is a judgment. You're paskening the way the Persians would paskin. That they would say that the person guarantees a loan and he doesn't have to pay. You can just say, all I meant is that I'll make the borrower available for you. Says the Gemara, why are you saying this? Adarab, on the contrary. Basa arve ozli. If you look at the way the Persians, they judge in such a kind of case, they actually say that you can go to the guarantor and collect from him even before you go to the borrower. They empower the right of the lender to go to the guarantor even first, even more than what we say. So why are you saying that the way we're explaining the Mishnah is like what the Persians do? So Ella, the Gemara explains what the question of Rav Nachman was. Beidine de parsoi de lo yavi taimu le musayu. That you're saying something which is similar to the way the Persians judge in their courts, where they have things that they judge that have no explanation for it. Here as well, you're saying a person's a guarantor for a loan and he doesn't have to pay the loan. Or you can excuse and say, I just meant that I'll make the lender, the borrower available for you. But I never meant that I'm going to actually pay if he doesn't pay. That doesn't make any sense. A guarantor means a guarantor. He's guaranteeing the loan. So how do you learn the pshat in our Mishnah that you can't collect from the guarantor? Elam Rav Nachman. So therefore Rav Nachman says, as we explained in the Mishnah, Maila Yifrim and Arev. What does the Mishnah mean when it says don't collect from the guarantor? Lo Yitfa Arev Tchila. You don't go to the guarantor first. You go first to the borrower. If the borrower doesn't have what to pay, then you go to the guarantor. Tanya Nami Achi. This is what we learned in the Brasa, exactly like this pshat. Amal v'schaver al yedei Arev. You lend someone money because someone's guaranteeing this loan. Lo Yitba Arev Tchila. You don't go first to the guarantor. If, however, the lender says that I'm only lending money on condition that I can collect from whoever I wish, then you can go even first to the guarantor to get the collection for this. Okay. Now here the Gemara brings the source b'chlal for this entire halacha that a guarantor becomes obligated to pay. And the question on this is, how did, just by words, by saying if he doesn't pay, I'll pay, he becomes obligated. The shibud, he has to pay. You have to usually make some kind of a kinyan, a shtar or kinyan, something that it should take effect. But from what it says in the Mishnah, and from what we'll see here in the Gemara, just by words, just by saying, lend him money, and if he doesn't pay, I guarantee this loan, just by words, you become obligated to pay. How? What's the source for this concept? So Rav Hona says, from where do we know that an Arev becomes obligated to pay just with the words alone? And says the Gemara, we learn it out from Yehuda. The Pasuk says, when Yaakov didn't want to send Binyamin down to Mitzrayim, so Yehuda says, I am guaranteeing him, and you'll request his return from me. So over here, he just said words, and he became obligated in this. So we see that just saying words, you become obligated. In fact, the Gemara, Rav Chisda asks on this, over here, it's not just a regular arevos. You're not just a regular guarantor. You're an arev kablon. Kablonis means it's a stronger level of a guarantor than a regular arev. You accept this on yourself as if you are actually the one that's borrowing. The Gemara on Kufay and Dala, the next daf, will explain that it depends on the language that the person says, that the guarantor says. Kablon is much stronger. So over here, how do we know that Yehuda was not just an arev, but he was a kablon? Because the language the pasuk says here is Tna oisa yadi v'ani ashivenu. Give him to me and I'll return him. The Gemara will explain later. This term Tna, give, when a person becomes a guarantor, he could either say lend him money, or you could say give. Give is stronger. Give means that I'm taking control of this whole thing, and I'm telling you, give him the money. So over here, Tna is al yadi v'ani ashivenu. So therefore, in this case, Yehuda was a kablon. So you can't learn out from here that by arebus, by regular guaranteeing, that your words itself is strong enough that it should take effect.
Kablon is a strong God. If it takes spell of Kablon, should
and a chanami. Okay, but the Gemara says that maybe when the person says this kind of lashon, There's a svara, there's some svara. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I understand what you're asking. There's a Gemara has a svara that dafka maybe a kabbalah takes effect, but a revis you're still sort of out of the picture. But I guess by a kabbalah you could say, what's the concept of a kabbalah? A kabbalah really means I'm the one that's borrowing the money. I'm telling you that I'm going to borrow the money. I'm going to give the money to the borrower. That's really what's happening. So the art of kabbalah is like he himself borrowed the money. So obviously he's going to be obligated to pay back because it's like he borrowed the money. But by a orev, a regular guarantor, the other guy is borrowing the money. I'm just guaranteeing it with words that I'll pay if he doesn't pay. So who says that will work? The Maharsha actually points out that this pasuk, Nois al Yadi, Yehuda didn't say it, B'chlal. This is the language of the pasuk that it says earlier on there when Reuven offered to guarantee Binyamin coming back. So why is the Gemara bringing what Reuven said? So the Maharsha says the pshat is simple because Yehuda would not say anything less than what Reuven said. If Reuven, Yaakov didn't want to agree to send, and then Yehuda is trying to convince Yaakov, for sure Yehuda accepted not just to be a plain Orev, but to be an Orev Kabbalah. There's actually another question here on this Gemara that all the Mefarshim point out. In this case, Yehuda is not really an Orev at all. He's like the borrower himself. He's taking Binyamin into his possession down to Mitzrayim, and he has to bring him back. So this is not even a case of an Orev where someone else is borrowing the money and you're guaranteeing. So what's the connection to the concept of an Orev? The Rebbe in the Sikha speaks about this barichas here in the continuation of the Gemara regarding this. The Rebbe says that we must say that Enochanami, this is not even a case of Arevus B'chlal, but because the pasuk uses the lashon, the language of Arevus, so the Gemara learns out from here that we see that just by saying that I'll be a Orev is enough. Okay, but now the Gemara refuted this, so the Gemara brings so Elam Rabbi Yitzchak Mehacha. Rabbi Yitzchak says that we learn it out from another pasuk in Mishlei where it says Lakach Bigdoi Ki Orev Zar. Take his garment because he guaranteed for someone else. Uba'ad Nachriya Chabaleyu. And Chabalei is also a term of to take from him because he guaranteed someone else. So you see over here that just because he guaranteed with words, so you can take from him, you can collect from him. Vaymer, another pasuk in Mishlei, it says B'ni my son imaraftu l'reyacha. If you guaranteed for your friend takata lazar kapecha, you gave your to someone else your hand. Nekashtu bimrei ficha. You stumbled on your words. Nulkadata bimrei ficha. Also, you got stuck with your words. This means that you offended someone, you embarrassed someone. I say, this is what you have to do, my son. You'll be saved. Kibasa bekafreyacha. You came into your friend's palm. Leiches rapes. Go. The simple pshat is rapes means go and denigrate yourself. V'rahav reyacha, and allow your friend to be a master over you. Well, the Gemara now darshans this. The beginning of the pasuk speaks about beniyim araftu l'reyacha, that if you became a guarantor for your friend. So at the end of the pasuk, what it's saying is imamay yeshloi biyotcha. If there's money that now he has in your hands, hatiloi pisas yad. So hisrapes means open up the palm of your hands to pay him. In other words, if you guaranteed to pay, so you have to open up the palms of your hand to pay. V'im lav, if you don't have what to pay, then harba olav reim. Rahav, the Gemara here darshans is meloshin harba. So then you're gonna have to find friends to appease him that he shouldn't collect the money from you. So here's another source that you see the halacha of arevos. Okay, now in the sikha there, this is a beautiful sikha in Chelik Lamed Parshas Vayigash. The Rebbe explains by Riches that even though if you look here in the Gemara, it seems like that the first opinion, Rav Chiste, that learned it out from Yehuda, is refuted, but in other places, Rashi in some places, and in other places, it's actually brought down the Maskana. And it's based on the continuation of the Gemara on Kufa and Daled, that you see that according to some opinions, that source does remain even the Maskana. So the Gemara, the Rebbe there explains that even though by the case of Yehuda, it's not talking about money b'chlal, it's talking about guaranteeing a person, his brother, Binyamin. But nevertheless, the chiddush of Rav Chiste is that being a guarantor for money and being a guarantor for another person, for another yid, goes together. Because the arevus that you find between one yid and another is also found regarding mitzvahs, regarding all kinds of things, that every yid is a arev for, every yid is a guarantor for another yid. The arevus by money is connected to the arevus b'chlal that there is between one yid and another. Mashenkin of Chizda and the other opinions that the Gemara is going to explain now say that the arevus that there is between yidden, as far as mitzvahs is concerned and so on, that's one concept of arevus. The arevus of money is a different concept. Money is a different thing. Over there, that's already gashmius money. It's not shaykh over there to speak about the arevus of Torah and mitzvahs. That's the basis of the machlokes there, whether you can use that arevus that you find by yidden b'chlal, to what extent it goes. Does it relate to money matters as well? Okay, that was there Masbe Barichis, this concept. Okay, now the Gemara brings another opinion about this, arevus, how a person's words itself create that obligation. So a third opinion here is, Omer Ameimer says, Orev de Mishtabit, this idea that the words of a person, that itself creates the shibud, creates an obligation to pay, Machloikes, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosi. This is the Machloikes that we had earlier in this Perek in a Mishnah between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi, the Amas Machta Kanya, Rabbi Yosi says, anytime a person says something that means that he really relied on him following through with something, that it won't come to the obligation that he says he would have to pay. For example, a person says, if I don't do such and such, then I'll give you $1,000. He never really meant to give $1,000. He was relying on the fact that he'll get that done. Same thing over here. RFC is someone wants to borrow money, and the lender doesn't trust him. He doesn't want to give him the money. Comes the guarantor and says, don't worry, I'll guarantee. He didn't expect to pay. He's hoping the borrower knows him, he's his friend, he's a mensch, he's going to pay up. So therefore, just your words is like an asmachta. You're relying he's going to pay. So therefore, that's the machlekes of here whether it works. So Rabbi Yosi, the asmachta kanya, just like Rabbi Yosi says, anytime you say such a thing. So we say that, no, you did mean it seriously. You said that if you don't do this, then you'll pay. It takes effect. So therefore, Arev Mishtabit. Here as well, your words will create the shibud. Rabbi Yehuda that says that asmachta is, you were relying that you won't come to the obligation to pay. So it doesn't take effect. So Arev Le Mishtabit. By an Arev, a guarantor, you also, it does not, the shibud of this does not take effect either. So Ravashi says to Meimar, but it happens every single day that asmachta does not take effect. And for Arev mishtabit, and yet on the other hand, we see that by Arevos does take effect. So there's a discrepancy here. You can't say that these two things are connected. So therefore Ravashi concludes another explanation how words alone could bring about a shibud, because the very fact that Reuven is trying to borrow money from Shimon, and Levi comes along and says, I'm guaranteeing, and the lender trusts him. So that itself, that in the business world, he sees that his word, when he guarantees, is being trusted, he's mishabed himself, the kinyan takes effect. So according to many Rishonim, the pshat of what the Gemara is saying over here is, trust between people in the business world is worth money. So just by the very fact that you're being trusted, that has a value of money, that's like a payment that you got, and therefore you're mishabed yourself. The kinyan takes effect. The Rashbam, however, says different. The Rashbam here says that in such a case, because you have a null from this, so it's like you're really the one that is in control of this whole thing, of this loan here. It's like you borrow the money and saying to the lender, give the money now to the loiva, and therefore the shibud will take effect through this.